Welcome to Spark Sessions. I'm your host, Sonya Locke, and this girl is on fire. Today's guest is a woman who leads with purpose and passion. Dr. Karla Estrada is the Deputy Superintendent of Instruction for the Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest school district in the country and home to more than 500,000 students. She is a daughter of immigrants, a proud LAUSD graduate, and a leader whose journey includes homelessness, alternative education, and an early academic trajectory that almost derailed her future. But instead of breaking, she built. Dr. Estrada went from struggling student to teacher, to state policy architect, to national leader, and now has returned home to lead the entire instructional strategy for LAUSD. Her mission is bold: transform compliance-driven systems into outcome-driven ones, and ensure every student, regardless of language, background, or circumstance, is ready for the world. Her story is proof that the spark you start out with does not define the fire you become. Dr. Estrada, Karla, thank you so much for being here. Your story is so inspiring. The work you do is so selfish and purpose-driven, and I just cannot wait to unpack all of your wisdom that you will give all of us today. So
Well,
thank you so much for coming.
I appreciate being able to share my story and talk with you a bit more.
I can't wait to dive in. So, I mean, every fire starts with a spark. Yes. And it's our roots that really kind of help shape us to who we are today. Mm-hmm. But let's unpack your journey. I mean, wow, you overcame a lot of circumstances to get to where you are today. But tell me how that shaped your life and where you came from and what got you to where you are now.
You know, my story is one in which I come from rich culture, rich identity. My parents came to this country from El Salvador and Mexico. And their story is one of resilience. They came to this country hoping for big things and dreams that they wanted to be able to pass on to next generations. And they did. They were able to accomplish many good things. But within that life, there was also a lot of challenges. And those challenges can create challenges not only for the family, but for their children. And those dreams and those hopes can begin to transform and change. I experienced homelessness at about 15 years old. Things were just not quite safe at home. And finding a place when you're trying to figure out who you are was a difficult choice, but it was one in which I knew at 15, when I was thinking, is this the kind of life I want to have for myself? I knew it was not. And it was the first time I think I really realized that I can let others control my life for me, or I can make choices that begin to control my own. Now, I'm an imperfect person. So as a teenager, I didn't always make the right decisions. But I think over time, what I realized was if I wanted to be able to have a different life, I needed to be able to begin to make choices that were going to create new paths for me. And that did. At 15 years old, day after day, I just started to make different choices. And again, some of them were not necessarily the ones that I would have wanted for myself, but sometimes I took a risk, for example, going to an alternative education program because I was not going to graduate on time. But it was transformative because it also helped me to see that community college itself, was actually for me. And so those kinds of life decisions, I think as young people, they have to make a lot of tough ones. But I think also we have to learn to trust in ourselves and know that the decisions you make can be the change you need and be able to have new opportunities.
That's amazing. And tell me about your experience going through both alternative education, learning to where it met you where you were supposed to be and gave you that guidance, and overcoming those challenges.
Yeah.
How that helps you with I guess, your career, working with so many millions of students all over the country. Well, mostly LA, but I mean, like, you've worked with a lot of different programs.
And across the state of California. Well, I will tell you that because the fact that I say to myself, look, as a young person, I had circumstances, some that were out of my control and some that were within my control. I chose not to go to school. I made those decisions, but the conditions in which I was living in caused me to sometimes not think clearly about the long-term journey. And I think that's something I think about when I try to create educational opportunities for our kids now. When I talk to my educators, I remind them that I was that student that likes to question a lot, likes to create her own path. So how do you channel those kinds of skill sets into something more? And it's something that I also think about when I think about day-to-day schooling. It must look different. Our kids want to be able to, and in some cases have to, work and go to school. And these are our high school kids. So how do we create educational pathways that look different than what we have experienced ourselves for many, many generations? Look, the educational field has not changed enough. It's not adapted as quickly as our kids need it to be. So my own story becomes that source of, one, remember that all kids need to find their own path and their own journey. And sometimes it may not totally show itself right away, but look for those beautiful nuggets of potential and opportunity. And the second piece is when something's not working for kids, let's think about how to do it differently. Because there's nothing that says there's only one way for educational paths to be successful. And I'm a perfect example of that.
Wow. And going through education, I mean, so you went to alternative school, then you
Yes.
went to college and
Yes.
everything, and then, getting your PhD. How did you go through all of that and I guess learning through the school systems as well?
Yeah. Well, so many people would not have thought that I would have been college material. And I don't think and I know there was a time where I wasn't sure myself. I ended up going to the community college because I was so behind in credits. And that's why I say, like, understanding opportunity is so important. So I didn't know that if I went to community college, which we call now dual enrollment, I could actually earn not only college courses, but credits towards my high school diploma. I didn't know that.
Wow.
And this is something when you think of families of poverty or families who don't necessarily understand the educational landscape, that you could earn double credit like that. That wasn't something I understood and knew. But once I attended community college, I realized there were so many people who were just trying to do exactly what I was trying to do. Not only survive, but thrive, be able to know what my educational options were, and just trying to make it day by day, meanwhile working and trying to go to school. And so I ended up realizing that this is exactly the right environment for me. And the girl who never would go to school became the girl who would always be at school. Remember, I was academically behind, so it wasn't just trying to catch up on credits to graduate. It was also skill sets, from reading, writing, numeracy, math. I was behind in a lot of different things. And so I not only had to make sure I was showing up to school at the community college, but making sure that I could keep up with my peers. And so that required another degree of persistence. And so it just sparked for me this understanding that if you're consistent, you create your own paths of journey, whether it's in education or how you choose to live your life, anything is possible. And it's the girl who didn't keep going to school was the one who actually persisted and got multiple degrees and has been able to contribute back to her community in ways that she never thought she'd be able to.
Oh, the way you contribute back to your community. And I imagine with your experience, you've seen those struggles. I mean, dealing with homelessness, lack of the school system finding you where you were at to give you that spark, that you had that power to do it.
Well, that's what's interesting. I don't think my high school counselor understood what she did for me. My high school counselor said to me, I was 17 years old, and she said to me, Karla, you're not going to graduate in time at this point. Here are your choices. And she gave you my choices, none of which were going to work for me. Do you see some patterns here already? Where I said, this is not going to work for me. What's another choice I have? And she said to me, well, your other choice is also going to our continuation school that's right next door. I can create an opportunity for you to go and meet with them and speak with them. And what I realized from that moment, she said to me, there isn't one path to that high school diploma if you're willing to take this chance and truly be the change that you need to be for yourself. Do you want it? And she changed my life completely because I realized that that moment on, I realized, when people say no to you, or when you feel like you've hit a wall and there's no other opportunity, there's always another door. And if there's not a door, find a window. It's one of the mantras. One of my favorite quotes is, "If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair."
I love that.
Shirley Chisholm said that, and I think that's exactly what it helped me see, that if I don't like my choices, create a new one. Who said that there couldn't be new choices? And it's been a path in which I've taken for my work and my career, and truly in life. It's one of the ways that I've seen, because you don't overcome homelessness, issues of safety and insecurity at home, and not be able to have challenges in how you move forward in life. But if you start to realize that you have the control that you have over your own emotions, control over your own decisions, control how you perceive things, it can change everything. But it's hard to get to that place. I think that's one of the things that I also focus on in education, is how our kids see themselves, and then how they see the world around them, and that they can be that change.
And let's talk about your role now. Like, you were not only shaping the future of these children and stuff like that, you're shaping the whole system.
Yes.
You're helping to break down some of those systemic barriers and lead. So tell me a little bit about what your role is now and all of your other stuff that you do. I know that I cannot even imagine how busy your day is on a day-to-day basis, but
yeah. I am so proud to be the Deputy Superintendent of Instruction in Los Angeles Unified School District. Not only because I'm a proud graduate, as I've just shared, it definitely transformed my life, education itself, but not just that, but the opportunities that Los Angeles Unified School District provided me. And so being able to come back and now serve as not only the Deputy Superintendent over all things academic, anything related to student support services, which include things like early childhood to adult education, to alternative educational options, to academics, reading, writing, arithmetic, the general day-to-day things that we do for our students, and social emotional learning and supports, all those pieces. But I also get the great privilege of supervising our over 1,100 schools, along with our superintendent. And so it's beautiful to be able to go back on my first day when I came back to Los Angeles Unified School District, after working nationally. I was a deputy superintendent in Boston, and then worked in the state of California. When I came back, it was something that felt like a true privilege in this role. So I went to my elementary school as in my first school visit to say, this is where it's all started. And I'm happy to be able to come back and be honored to serve in this capacity.
It's amazing. And I mean, you get to make changes that help fix the system that was somewhat broken for you. So what are some of the things how do you motivate those with you, for the teachers and for the educators that are out there? How do you, I guess, give them that fire to continue to push forward and make these transformations in such a big, I'm sure, very bureaucratic system?
Oh, yes. I've understood my role to be two things. One, I have to make sure that the system is set up for our students to be successful. And so I use information as the driver to whether I'm listening to people to understand what's working for them or not, to also understand when things need to change. And that brings me to the second big piece of my role, is to be able to inspire others to change. Sometimes we hold on to things because it's the way it's always been done. That's a common one I hear. Or there's a degree of fear to understand, like, if we change things now, what are going to be the pros and cons to that? And in a large system, you have to think about that. We are the second largest school district in the country, so you have to be thoughtful in your decisions. But that doesn't mean that things should remain the way they are. So when it comes to some of the key things that I have kept at the forefront, is knowledge should not remain just with me. Knowledge needs to should be shared with the entire team, whether that's data, whether that is feedback that we're getting about whether something's working or not, or if it's being able to just say, look, we have understood that this wasn't working for our children. How's it going to be different? And so that then begins to create a conversation that leads to So why not change? Why keep it the same? What's the benefit? And what's the lack of success that we are experiencing because we've kept things the same? But so having those kinds of conversations, because sometimes good things, you need to hold on to good things, but you also have to recognize when something's not working, and then you feel comfortable to make the change. And sometimes I have to be the first one to say it, the first one to inspire it. But you'd be amazed how people, when they see that they can influence things to be different to the betterment of our students, it's a very rare occasion that I don't see people willing to act. But you have to inspire people to do things differently sometimes.
That actually leads perfectly into the challenges, right? In our burns, like how you have that power to continue to inspire and go through those challenges. It's perfect. I mean, you, like I said, I believe you've overcome every challenge that's been thrown at you, haven't you? I mean, remarkable. And now you lead over 500,000 students and so many variants with those students and stuff. What are some of the challenges? How have you pushed through some of those challenges to make a real difference?
Yes.
I mean, the school system is very systematic. You deal with a very diverse student body, especially here in LA. So let's talk about the challenges and how you overcome those and make that difference.
Yeah. The world is something that is a big, big place. And so but that's what I'm preparing my kids for, my students. I'm preparing them for that world. And the educators that I work with are also trying to prepare our kids for a world that they know some pieces they're familiar with. They know what the biology lesson's going to be, but they also don't know how things will change in the future. And that can sometimes be overwhelming for our kids, but it's also for us as an educational system. How do you become as adaptive as necessary to be able to make sure our kids are ready for a world that is constantly changing? And one of the things that I find is, one, you got to listen carefully with an open heart and an open mind. The reason why is because how people are experiencing these changes vary. I have some students and some educators who are able to embrace these changes very quickly, are able to see how they have their first step forward. My grandmother always used to say, no matter what the challenges are, it all starts with one step, un pasito. And it's one of those things, they feel comfortable taking that first step in a place of change. And then I have others, students and other staff members who are educators who are trying to figure out, how do I take that first step towards change or that adaptive nature that I need to have? So by listening with an open heart and mind, you learn what people really need. Is it a skill set? Is it something to understand? They're just still trying to understand. Sometimes I find it's just having a common language that people don't know what certain things mean. And so they're trying to understand, what am I supposed to do first? Second big piece, though, I mentioned earlier, was inspiration. The reason why inspiration matters as a leader is because of the fact that people sometimes are fearful, but also they don't understand what their next step could potentially look like. So I give them options. I give them choices, giving them examples of what that can look like. I say that to you because for my own self and my own journey, if I was always waiting for the opportunity or choices to come my way, it would have been very difficult. I find sometimes as a leader, your job is to be able to create choices for folks that they feel are actionable, that it's possible. And sometimes you need to be the person to help them to know that it's possible. You support them through those possibilities. And then what you'll see is they will take it and run with it for their own direction. It happened to me. I know it can happen for them. We've all had mentors in our lives or positive influencers in our lives who remind us that that first step can be scary, but you should try to take it. Or they nurture it in you because you are willing to be so bold. You are willing to be so energetic of that first step that you just take it. So those kinds of things are really essential for any leader to know how to be able to listen with an open heart and mind, while at the same time know that you're inspiring for them to be able to take their next path.
Yeah. And I mean, breaking down, I'm sure, the barriers. I mean, you just did you come in as a bulldozer and just say, okay? We're going to fix the system now.
I am impatient by nature, so you'll see that I can be impatient. I think that's the thing where over time you get refinement and polish and you learn new skill sets to be able to navigate things that are unjust, for example. Issues of justice are quite passionate for me. So, and especially in an education system where some kids are successful, some are not. How do you stand by and watch that and not want to say, what are we going to do about this? This has to change tomorrow. So how do I balance that and hold on to that? Because I think that's critical, while at the same time recognizing that as a leader, what's the point of being at the end of the marathon if you're the only one there by yourself? This is not just a race. It's about bringing people together, because we are in a business of educating people. So you've got to be willing to take both. How do you hold on to that passion and at the same time recognize that collaboration, bringing people together, is essential? It's necessary. And that's why I say I focus on listening with an open heart and mind, because if I don't start with that first, I think I've become part of the problem as well.
Yeah, I think you definitely do it. And breaking down the silos, like you said, there's with your district, there's so many different types of challenges out there. We talk about, like I know one of your big mandates is suicide prevention, and it's very difficult at this age group right now. I mean, I feel like it's a pandemic. I think the numbers have tripled or skyrocketed over the last 10 years. Like, how do you deal with it on the emotional level of also bridging that gap, along with education and providing a platform for those with disabilities or social and emotional issues or homelessness like you had to deal with? It's how do you challenge, I guess, all of those things at the same time?
One is because I also don't see our students as broken. I see the people I work with as just people who are struggling but not broken. And so what I try to really pay attention when we're looking at our suicide prevention work or our social well-being work, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done around social emotional well-being. In Boston, for example, it was one of my non-negotiables of working in Boston, was that I wanted to make sure we had an office for social emotional well-being. Now in my work, it's critical to recognize that our students have come from the pandemic in a unrecognizable experience that we just never thought we would ever be in. But we went through that. And so the impact, of course, is going to be experienced by our kids in many different ways. And I think there are other contributing factors as well. And so how do I plant seeds within our students of what their emotional well-being needs to be like, and give them the skill sets for those seeds to one day blossom? That's the most important things, because in life there are ups and downs. They are not just experiencing them at that age group in their adolescent years. It's part of life. And so how do I make sure that they have the skill sets? I know for myself, coping skills of recognizing that there were things that were out of my control, and then trying to learn, how do I put things back into control that I feel I've made choices towards. That is something that self-control, that self-regulation, is not an easy thing to do. And so we have to be explicit in teaching it. So I really do see it as planting seeds, and I'm waiting for them to blossom within our students. But we have to be explicit about it. And we also have to recognize that our students need more than just the reading, writing, and arithmetic in education. We have to do so much more.
There is so much more. And that's what I think is so powerful about what your work has done and how you are leading the system here. It's so beautiful. I mean, it is truly with a heart that you have led through all this, but the challenges that you must have gone through, I can't imagine being in your role and during the pandemic. How did you guys make those pivots, and what got you through some of those, I guess?
Yes. At the time I was working with the state, and one of the things when you're looking at statewide in California, you're trying to understand every community's different need. And even in a district like Los Angeles, where we are 710 square miles, every community is different, and what they need are different things. So we had to figure out very quickly what are some of the foundational things that every school district may need, and how could I contribute to that? And then I also had to understand that not every community is going to be exactly the same. So how do you leave room for differentiation? That was something that was a complicated time. But I think we navigated it as best we could, knowing the information that we had at the time. But at the same, on the flip side, I think we also had to recognize that we needed to move quickly to be able to address the needs of our community, from serving food to being able to continue education. We had students who were trying to graduate from high school, and this should not be something that holds them back. We had children that needed services and supports. How do we provide that? But I think also on the other side of that, we saw some good things come from being adaptive that quickly. Technology has totally changed how it informs quality instruction in our schools as a tool. That was something that not all educators felt comfortable with, but we learned quickly. Parents grew very quickly in their skill sets and using it, as well as our students, although I think our students always were much further ahead than we were in that. But there were some positive things that we were able to come from that. And I'm proud to say that now, I mean, even academically, as I've been in Los Angeles Unified School District past few years, we have now returned back to pre-pandemic performance levels, which very quickly, because we know what needed to be done. And I think it's just making sure we remain focused on solving for those needs. And that included social, emotional well-being, ongoing food needs, whatever it may be. And our community really came together to be able to do that. So it was an interesting experience to see that statewide, and now to be able to come back to Los Angeles Unified and see how we see the other end of the pandemic has also been really powerful.
Well, I thank you so much for what you're doing for, our young learners out there, and for, uniting those communities and understanding the social well-being as well as just the education side of it, and marrying those together. It's such important work you do. So you've lived the challenges. You personally have overcome all those challenges, and have helped shape like policy and strategy and vision to help those that are coming behind you. But let's look at it on a more of a societal basis. How and answer, how do we convert the empathy women leaders have, especially for those in that struggle, into equity and to lifting the others up, especially our early learners? Like, how is our empathy and, I guess, our nature as a woman leader and as a Latino woman leader, how has that helped shape the future generation, I believe?
Women, we have this superpower of being many different things. So we can show empathy, but we can also be very strong in our ability to act. We can be kind, but we can also make the hard decisions. Women have the ability to tap into that emotional softness and at the same time be able to be decisive. I don't know if I always say it, be soft, but also make the tough decisions, I think is the word I'm looking for. That ability to do that is something that I'm so proud about being a woman, and then being a Latina who then of course has to do it with an extra flair. I think is one of those things that women leaders have to embrace more. I think too often we're being told you have to be one thing, but you can't be the other. And I think as a woman leader, I have to always decide what this moment needs. Does this moment need for me to be softer, be the person in the room that brings and joins people together, fosters the conditions for collaboration, for example, to happen? Or is this a moment where a tough decision needs to be made? I get informed by that, but then I know that I, as the leader, have to make that decision. And knowing when to do that is a skill set I think that women leaders have. We're just not encouraged to embrace that as much as we should. So I love seeing that. Please.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and that's a beautiful quality. But also, like, how do we keep that from bridging the gap wider? Like, technology is changing, everything is changing around us. And, is it making the gap larger for people that are struggling, especially like those that are having homeless issues and disabilities and stuff like that? How do we bridge that gap?
So I think technology can be a friend, but I think we also be very aware, and I think that's the bigger challenge that people are trying to understand, is you have to be aware of where the pitfalls may exist. So technology gives you access to information that we never thought we would have at our fingertips. I can ask Siri a variety of different questions and it immediately can tell me how to get from point A to point B very quickly. We all remember the days of the Thomas maps. Young people may not know. But remember, we used to have to figure out how to be able to get from one place to another. Now with technology, it's so quick, so easy, and it also tells you how to be able to do it to avoid certain roads you don't want to take. That's fantastic. For our communities that need information of how to get resources and services, so much more easily available to you. But I also think that if you're not careful, technology can be something that overtakes your life. We've all seen what, for example, for our young people, we've been very careful of educating them on the impact of social media.
Yes.
Impact of the information you get, and how are you critically thinking about, is the information being provided to me actually valid based on good information, or is this someone who's trying to influence my thinking based on false information? How do I help our young people make those decisions is part of the education that we're also providing. Because again, I want them to be a part of the world that's changing around them, but I also want them to be informed with the skill sets to then decide when something is right for them, when it's not, and then how to get to the truth that they're looking for. That's a skill set that our young people are going to need to adapt in this AI and technology-based world.
Well, and I think that's also where it goes back to things like empathy. That's not technology. And I think that's where, as leaders, that we can, not only share our experiences, but our passions of that you are not stuck into that particular thing,
Yes.
to help pull them to that next level. Because they're challenged. There's challenges. If they're homeless, they probably don't have the technology, right? So how do they get not left behind in this world, but how do we help propel that and
This is why
build
your
it?
networks matter. Like, if we begin to isolate ourselves because of technology, this is where you're then not accessing the people around you who also can be a network of support. I know one of the things that we've been doing, for example, for our kids, is going out to them instead of waiting for them to come to us. We've also been building the capacity of their peers to be a resource, to be a connector. So that way they understand that there is someone, if it's not an adult in their lives, that there are young people who are available to also be a resource to them. I also think when we think about the skill sets our young people need, as you talked about how technology can have such an impact on skill sets like empathy. I was reading an article that talked about some of the human skills that our young people need to be able to do well in a technology-based world or an AI world. And the two that really stuck to me was, one, that they have to be able to have heart in what they do and what they read and what they see, that they're connected to their emotional reactions to what they're seeing and hearing. If something doesn't feel right, doesn't seem right, seems hurtful, all those kinds of emotions and reactions, those are good ones to nurture within our kids, because that way they understand between what's right and what's wrong. And how do you understand and recognize that? The second thing they talked about was recognizing ethics and biases.
Yes.
That's the one thing that technology is not going to solve for us. Those are the kinds of things that our young people also need to understand. And so I think those human skills are still going to be very essential for the world around them. And I think for our kids who are struggling and seeing challenges in life, I think that's one of the things, that's why I say to you, being sure that we listen to the kinds of things that our young people are looking for. One thing that they talk to me a lot about is climate change, for example. They want to see what they can do to change that, and what parts of that will they actually have the ability to pivot and disrupt. They're thinking about the foods they eat and how the foods that they're eating are overly processed. What can they do in our education system in LA Unified to disrupt that? Those are the kinds of things I'm so glad our kids recognize what's right and what's wrong, and they're questioning the world around them. Those are those human skill sets that that article was talking about. And I know our kids, we have to create those conditions to make sure our kids can continue to do that.
No, I think that's so important, and giving them a purpose, of what they can do, and they can make those changes. And I think that's what your message today is. Like, you can overcome anything, and you have to take control of your life, own who you are, and create your path.
Yes.
And wow, you're an amazing leader and woman.
Thank you.
And so, Karla, you give so much to others. I can just feel You do lead with a heart all the time, but how do you fan your flame? What helps fill your cup when have the world's burden on your shoulders? I'm sure that's what you feel most of the day because you're shaping these young lives. How do you keep your fire burning?
Growing up the way I did, there were always inconsistencies in life. And one of the things, though, that it did create in me was this desire to persist and look for new opportunity, knowing that the conditions in which I was in didn't need to remain that way, that they could change. I think, unfortunately, that created this drive to, consistently and constantly work. I do work a bit, too much sometimes, I think. But I'm passionate about it. I love what I do. But if you're just working to sustain and to just, push through things, you will find you're going to burn out. And so one of the pivotal things that I've changed over the years is that I am not working to just be able to work. I work in a way and on things that matter the most to me. So I'm working to not just sustain that, but to thrive. I want to thrive. I show up to work and I'm happy at work. I say good morning to people. I have positive exchanges because I know that I'm joyful about what I do. I made a pivot many, many years ago about the work that I do and saying like, oh, I'm working. And no, I love what I do. So I'm going to be passionate about it. I'm going to be happy about it. So one is that mindset. I think I've always made sure that I did things that matter to me, but I also have to do it from a place of love. So I try to really remain centered on that. A couple things I do to be able to make sure I do that is one, I read. Again, I always think back to being the kind of student I was. Some people would not have thought that that's something in my pastime that I like to do. But I love to read. And I'm one of those, I'm not a traditional reader. So I'm not one to begin from, I'm not going to put this book down until I'm done. I like to try different books at different moments in my life. So I have about, a couple of them that I'm reading all at the same time, which shouldn't surprise anybody. It's kind of what I do is reading multiple books at that same time. But I think it feeds my soul with what I need at that time. And so being really in tune with myself through my reading is one. The second thing I do is I try to spend time doing things that bring me joy. And I think too often, I really would encourage people because I think too often we don't just stop and write down the things that truly bring us joy. We think about these big vacations or this big trip you're going to take. Those are powerful. Don't get me wrong. We all love those. But it's the small things on a daily basis that bring you joy, that fill your cup to allow you to continue to see the world differently and in a positive way and act in that manner. And I think the last thing that I try to do, I do exercise. I don't exercise to be this super fit person. I exercise because it just makes me feel better, allows me to be able to breathe and let things go. It creates the kind of conditions for my mind to be able to be focused on the things that really matter, make me happy, are joyful, or those things when it's tough times. Listen, as a leader, you're always dealing with difficult situations, but how you deal with those situations, your state of emotions during that time makes a huge difference of whether you help a group of people move past and move forward. Or do you get stuck? And I'm not one to problem admire. I hate to sit there and problem admire something. I'm solutions driven kind of person, but that starts with your mindset. And if you don't create the space for you to be able to do that, then you're not going to necessarily be your best self.
I love all of those. All right, what's one of your favorite books that you've read recently?
So right now I'm reading Braiding Sweetgrass. It's a book about how indigenous communities have used nature as a way to tell their stories, to hold on to their identity. And so it's a chapter of different plants and how indigenous communities, Native American communities, tell stories through these plants. And the science of how they would explain how they would flourish and why. And so I find it to be a nice bringing a joining together of storytelling at the same time of understanding some of the, science in the world around us and the plants and nature in the world around us. So it's a wonderful way to kind of, it's really beautiful to see how people tell their stories in powerful ways.
So I think this next segment, I mean, you really are passing the torch. And that's what we like to talk about is, how are we passing it forward to the next generation? And your story, your accomplishments and your heart is just, you really have motivated an entire generation. So, but tell me, if you could go back to your 17-year-old self, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to remain courageous when there are things that you don't know where you're going to live. You don't know how you're going to sustain yourself. I know what it feels like to be hungry. I know not knowing where your next meal is going to come from. I know what that feels like. But to remain courageous, because what may feel impossible is absolutely possible. I think it was that desire for things to be different is what helped me to be able to continue in what could seem like difficult moments that could last a lifetime, but they didn't. And so to remain courageous and to trust the timing of things. I think the other thing, when you are a young person who has had such inconsistencies in life, you're sometimes fearful of something new, a new adventure. I had never left the state of California for a job or thought that I would ever do something like that. And I ended up moving to Boston and starting a new path and career there. And it was fantastic. I met great people. I learned a lot about myself. I learned about another place outside of my home. And then it took me to my next adventure. And ultimately it brought me back to Los Angeles Unified School District. So recognize that the timing, it may seem like unpredictable, but it can create new doors that you never thought would open for you. So, but that's what I would say to myself.
You're definitely shining the light. What do you hope your legacy to be?
My hope is that through telling my story, I didn't always tell my story. I think there is a bit of, unfortunately, I think over time, being homeless, surviving a lot of the challenges that I survived at home, being a victim of those things, there's a lot of shame that comes with that. But I learned to tell my story and use it as a source of power, of a place of inspiration for others, so that people can see that you can come from an experience just like my own, but that is not your only path, that can be a source of so much strength. That identity can serve as such a source of strength, but that it's what fuels you into new opportunities. And my legacy is one, to be able to hopefully my story does that. The second piece is that I have served in education because education transformed my life. I have choices in life now that I never thought I would be able to have. And that's because of the education I've had. And so I want to make sure that my students get the best that they can from their educational experience. But most importantly, I hope they walk away knowing that opportunities exist everywhere in that LA Unified, whatever school system I'm working in, but especially my home school district. That means a lot to me. In LAUSD, to know that our kids can be able to have so many choices in life right in their community, that matters a lot to me. And I want my students to know that they have that. This is why I've been launching big initiatives that create not just a high school diploma, but so much more. You should be graduating with a AA degree. You should be graduating with a certification in an industry recognized field. Those are the things that I want to see from my kids. And if I have the ability to make change and lead in that way, that's a great legacy. But really, truly, I want my kids to feel so powerful as an individual, and that their story matters. And that starts with recognizing that your identity is a critical foundation to who you are and what you will become. Hold on to it. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
And representation matters.
Yes.
Be able to see someone like you lead the way. It's amazing. You are a legend already.
Thank you.
Is there any initiative that you are particularly passionate about right now that you're pushing through?
Yeah. As I shared with you, definitely the Dream It, Achieve It. is an initiative that we just we just recently launched, and it's focused on graduating our students with either a high school diploma and an AA degree, or an industry recognized certification. I'm also focused on creating internship opportunities, paid internship opportunities for my kids. Kids of privilege get that. All of our kids in LA Unified should get that as well. And so I want to make sure that they get those same opportunities. I'm excited about that because that was really what would have changed my life. That counselor I told you did something for me that I don't know if she recognized it, but she taught me that there are many choices. When one door closes, there's another door that opens. It's just, are we willing to do what's necessary to make sure our kids know what they are? And I want to make sure my kids are knowledgeable about what their choices are.
Those are great. And then we'll get every business leader to help find internships.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what they need.
Okay, so now this is the fun part. This is one of my favorite parts, the fire round. Super simple. First thing that comes to your mind, okay? One word to describe your leadership style.
Bold.
I would definitely say that. Favorite LAUSD school food item?
Our coffee cake, of course.
Oh, that sounds yummy. Your go-to mantra before a board meeting?
Listen for opportunity.
Very good. A lesson from becoming BCBA?
That behavior is an excellent skill set as a leader. You need to know how behavior is influenced. Everyone has positive reinforcers. Everyone has negative reinforcers. Those could be very helpful to you.
Very good. Coffee, tea, or total water immersion?
Oh, coffee, of course. The bolder, the stronger, the better.
One app you could not live without?
Grubhub. I don't cook. I'm not as planful about my meals, so Grubhub is the only way I survive, especially when my husband's out of town.
Oh, I don't either. I DoorDash everything.
Yes.
Your favorite part of being bilingual, bicultural?
That I can go to any country and I am open to learning, figuring it out, because my mindset has always been one in which listening in different languages, welcoming things that I didn't fully know and understand. I'm open to all of that. And I think it's because I'm bicultural and bilingual. You just embrace language and cultural identity in such a different way because you have your own stories to tell.
I think that's so important too. A song that instantly boosts your mood?
Oh, there's two. Happy by Pharrell and Mark Anthony's Vivir Mi Vida. You just can't when you hear that song, you just can't help but get up and dance. It's just one of those songs that gets your shoulders moving.
That's perfect. Your guilty pleasure show?
The Great British Baking Show. Again, I don't cook, but I love to see how these normal people are trying to figure out how to bake these amazing soufflés and just how they have fun with it. They stress themselves out, but they remain happy. So I love that show.
Oh, that's so good. All right. And one thing every teacher should know?
Students need to know first that you care about them. Before you do anything else, they need to know you care. Take the time to do that.
That's very good. That's perfect. So final question that we ask everyone. So Dr. Estrada, what is your one truth? The one thing that keeps you fired up day after day?
To breathe. This is a chapter in a story. It is not the entire story. So breathe. I think one of the most important things I've learned in life is that things are impermanent. That too often we're worried about this is going to be forever. Is this going to stick with me forever? That I've had a lot of ups, downs, rights, lefts in my life. Things that I knew were coming, things I did not know they were coming. But by taking a breath, recognizing that things will change and that I have to trust that I have what it takes to be able to navigate it is probably my most important skill and most important thing I try to keep to memory and to heart.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. Your story is one of
Thanks for the opportunity.
Just encouragement and light. And I mean, it definitely needs to be told to everyone. And your spirit is just, wow, you can really change the world. So thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for tuning in to Spark Sessions. Until next time, keep your fire burning.